Alright, so a couple of weeks ago, we got a brand new Kung Fu Panda film. This one is titled Kung Fu Panda 4. Pretty straightforward there. I already have a review on my channel. That one was along with the Roadhouse and Ghostbusters Frozen Empire review. But today, I am going to rank all 4 Kung Fu Panda films from my least favorite, some movies that I don't actually like, to my favorite, which movies I think are pretty good. I don't have a personal connection to the franchise. Obviously, when I was a little kid, I used to watch the movies when they came out, but I don't have a big personal connection with them anymore. I only rewatched them before seeing the 4th one. I thought they were good, thought they were fine, and so I don't think that they're the, like, premier DreamWorks franchise. Like, I know a lot of you hold these so high that some of these movies are your favorite animated movies of all time. I just don't feel that way towards them. I feel like they're fine movies, they're fun movies. I just don't think that they are great movies. Some of them are really good. They always have a couple of issues that weigh them down. Before I tell you which ones are in which order, please make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell if you never want to miss another controversial ranking. There's a hint. This ranking is going to be controversial. Is why you're doing that. Go down below in the comment section and comment down below what is your ranking of the 4 Kung Fu Panda films. I want to know all that and much, much more. And with that said, there's no question about this. This is like the easiest decision I've made in a ranking in quite some time. 4th place is Kung Fu Panda 4. I genuinely didn't like the movie. I genuinely wasn't a fan of the film. And it sucks because there was quite a bit that had potential here. I think the villain was interesting. Bringing back Tai Lung could have been cool. But the movie just feels like it is a film that should have been put on Netflix as like a half-an-hour TV episode for little kids to sit down and enjoy. Because that's what this episode was. It was a cash grab. There is nothing super unique or interesting about this movie that has not been done in other animated franchise or even in this franchise itself. It's the same thing that we've gotten before. Poe's character arc in Kung Fu Panda 3 was he's going to stop being the Dragon Warrior because he's got to train people. His character arc in this movie is he's got to stop being the Dragon Warrior because he's got to train people. It's the same exact character arc. Nothing about his character arc is fleshed out. They cast Awkwafina and a character that could be pretty interesting. She had a twist in the movie that I think was by far the best part. I did like that twist. But the movie, after the twist, she's just Awkwafina. There's nothing special about her. And like even the twist, the way things work out after that doesn't make any sense with her character. Tai Lung here has this conversation with Poe and is like, hey Poe, you know, you kind of suck. You were not the good choice here. And Poe's like, yeah I was, let me prove it to you. And he fights the bad guy. He loses, lets the Awkwafina character fight her. Awkwafina wins. And Tai Lung walks up to Poe and says, hey, you're not that bad. Poe didn't do anything. Poe, the script makes no sense. It's clearly just a movie that they pumped out just to get kids in the theater and watching the movie and making money. And it worked. And that sucks for a franchise that could have had a potentially interesting 4th film. And I was worried going into this one, and all the worries came true. This is by far the worst Kung Fu Panda movie. This is where my list starts to get a little controversial here, because coming in 3rd place is the first Kung Fu Panda. Typically in a lot of people's rankings, it's Kung Fu Panda 3. It's not here. So I put the first movie here. Don't get me wrong, I really like the movie. I think Poe is such a likable character, voiced wonderfully by Jack Black, that you can feel that he's just such this likable character. And he's just such this relatable character. So he's a character that so many people can connect with on an emotional level that I personally connected with. And so I thought that that was something that really just kind of fleshed the movie out. It's because you get him as a likable character. The voice cast is obviously everybody in the Furious 4 or Furious 5. Everybody there is great. They are awesome. The action sequences in this movie exceeded my expectations. I thought they looked great. And the movie's just entertaining to watch. Like, obviously you got that emotional core here with Poe and him learning not to be a loser, or him being a loser and finally getting his dreams come true. but it's just like an all-around fun movie that you never fully get bored by. The third act does have a few problems with it, though. Number one, Poe is kind of like, for the first 2 acts, he's always like, everybody hates him. He's kind of a loser. And so in the final act, when Poe's gotta step up and stop the bad guy, and the training sequence, that's rushed through. It's like a 5-minute sequence to where Poe goes from not knowing anything to knowing how to beat Tai Lung. There's no way that he could actually beat Tai Lung, right? And there's where my second negative comes in, because the way he beats Tai Lung is just kind of pathetic to me. I mean, sure, it's cool. It's a really good moment where he shows him the scroll and says, the Dragon Warrior's not anything. And that's a really cool moment. But then Tai Lung just goes crazy, and Poe's just able to balance everything off a murderous killing machine that almost killed the Furious 5. That it doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't like the way he defeats him at all, and just kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. Tai Lung is a great villain. He had a great emotional core back to his past as well. I thought that was really good. And he is a great villain. Not my favorite in the franchise, but I do think he's a great villain. But I like the movie. I thought it was a good movie. It's just had a couple problems. And out of the rest of these movies, this was the movie that had the most of those problems. Another controversial pick, number 2, Kung Fu Panda 2. I know what's in first place. I know a lot of you aren't the biggest fans of that movie, but it is my favorite. Let's talk about Kung Fu Panda 2. This is the movie that feels the most lived in, and there's another part that I didn't much like about Kung Fu Panda 1 is that the world just doesn't feel lived in. It feels like an empty world, honestly, so the threats don't seem as big. This movie fixes that problem and makes the world feel lived in. Like, it's not just a world where there's just this one tiny village and then all this other area. It feels like there's a past, a history to it that really kind of works. The villain here is pretty great. I think he is a great villain. I'm not sure if I'd say he's as good as Tai Lung. He's definitely not as good as the next villain in the franchise, that's for sure. But he is a pretty good villain, and I liked him. The action sequences here, best in the franchise, I believe. They look absolutely stunning with all the battles that they take. It's a good action movie in and of itself than is a good kids movie. Like, it's got everything you want from an action movie. Non-stop action sequences, a villain that you care about, characters that you care about, and again, that emotional core where Poe's emotional journey in this movie is unique. It's not like the first movie. It is a whole separate thing that really works as we get to the end, and it just kind of sets up this panda world that I thought was explored perfectly in Kung Fu Panda 3. So I think there's just so much to love about this movie. I thought for sure after watching it be number 1. I thought it was just highly entertaining, highly enjoyable, had a great emotional core, a great villain, and just such a good world. As we enter the third act, I'm not gonna lie, this is the movie that feels the most like it was trying to condense it down to an hour and a half. There was obviously a report that came out like 5 weeks ago, right before the movie came out, that people were saying that, yeah, we make these movies an hour and a half so kids don't get bored. And this is definitely the movie that feels like it was condensed to an hour and a half, that it should have had maybe 10 more minutes and fleshed it out there just a little bit. But besides that, I really enjoyed this movie and thought it would be number 1 until I watched my real number 1, which is Kung Fu Panda 3. Controversial take, I've never seen a single list where Kung Fu Panda 3 was number 1 except mine. I thought this was just a great end to the trilogy. I really thought that this movie really worked. Now, it's not as explosive and big and feels as big as the second Kung Fu Panda movie. It's more down to that little scope of the first one. I mean, of course, the world still feels lived in because we're in a completely different area and we learn some more lore. But it feels like it could have passed off as like a Netflix movie, not a super big movie. But at the same time, it has the best stuff in this franchise. The emotional core here is absolutely great. Poe finally meets his family. And while he meets his family, they're lying to him so they don't lose him. Because the father doesn't want to lose his family. Poe doesn't want to lose his father, but he also doesn't want to lose the battle against the bad guy that is coming. And so when we get that scene on the bridge where Poe says, no, you're not my dad anymore. That is the best scene in the entire franchise. I had goosebumps for that scene. I was like, dang, that was an excellent scene inside of this movie. I thought it was really, really compelling. On top of that, the villain is the best villain in the franchise. I mean, he had a sick tune. Every time he walked around, he was there. He's the most villain that I sat back and was like, yeah, you gotta watch out for that guy. That guy can kick some serious butt. He was just intimidating. I thought he was hands down the best villain in the franchise. The action sequences are pretty great in this movie as well. Overall, I think that this franchise should have just ended with Kung Fu Panda 3. Po's found his family. He's learned to become kind of like a teacher at the end of that one. And he saved the Valley of Peace again. Like, that was great. And then we had to get a Kung Fu Panda 4 where it undoes all of that. And that's just what frustrates me about Kung Fu Panda 4, is that we had this movie and I think it's the best in the franchise. I think it does everything pretty well. Again, feels like it could be a little less quality than Kung Fu Panda 2. Feels more toned down, not the fate of the world type thing in this movie, but I think that this is the movie that I will also be going back to the most in this Kung Fu Panda franchise. So that's why I had to put it at number 1. What is your ranking of the Kung Fu Panda movies? That is the most important question here. I don't know all that and more. While you're down there, subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the bell so you never miss another one of my controversial rankings. Didn't I tell you it would be controversial? I will have Ghostbusters ranking and Monsterverse ranking coming in a few days. Before the Monsterverse ranking, I will have a Godzilla x Kong the New Empire review. I have seen that. I have loved it. So that's going to be a fun review to shoot. Go check out my second channel. I'm going to start posting a couple more videos on it. I'm about to watch the Batman The Long Halloween Part 1 and 2. Then I'm going to kind of do a comic battle where I'm going to have the comic against the movies. So that's going to be a fun video over on my second channel. Go check that out at More ZMC. And with that said, thank you guys for clicking on this one. And with that said, subscribe to join the Nerd Army. Peace out.